Hi everyone, here's a video on writing a production plan. So this is stage 2. This is taking your planning document where you've identified all the different steps and putting them in a logical sequence. So that means you know you do task 1 before task 2 before task 3. You don't have to say in this document which date you'll do it on, you don't need to get into that detail, but you need to transfer the amount of time that you think each one will take across from your planning document. Again, transfer the processes across and try to now put them into some logical sequential order. For this stage here, it's okay to seek advice from myself or Mr. McCurtain. We have more experience in this area and you're allowed to draw on that experience of understanding. For the textile students, you can use the base instructions of your pattern, but obviously there'll be the modifications as to where things are changed, and the same for woodwork students. You're allowed to find a plan to build a basic cabinet, use those steps, put them in the order that you need, and then add your steps in for your difference. For example, if you're doing some inlay, you would need to put that in, or if you are putting 2 drawers, you would need to make sure your production plan reflected those changes. For each step that you are identifying, you don't need too much detail. Join cabinet sides. That's simple. Sew bodice together. It doesn't need to be, join front right-hand side with back right-hand side using a biscuit join, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to have that detail. Just that the first step I'm doing is joining all the sides together. You do need to nominate the materials that you're going to be using for that step. So that shows us that you understand you're doing the step and these are the pieces of your timber or fabric that you are needing to use, and any fastenings, glues, threads, things like that will also be used. So you're able to accurately predict what materials are needed for each step. So for example, you would just dot point front panel and then what the timber is, side panel timber, the biscuits and PVA glue. Here, there's 2 panels, which fabric they're out of, because it could be the lining that you're sewing or it could be the actual bodice, and then the thread. The equipment required, okay, again this can come straight from your planning document. You should have already been able to identify which equipment, tools, machinery that you will need to complete each stage in the process. The safety issues, this you've already done. This is in your risk assessment. So you might actually at this stage realise that your risk assessment is lacking some things, you've forgotten to mention some tools. So you can go back at this stage, you can refer back to your risk assessment or you can update it to include all of the tools and equipment that you'll be using. You can do this column either way. You can write out your little safety guidelines, or you can say refer to risk assessment and number your different tools and materials and processes, etc. in your risk assessment and say, for this stage I would refer to risk assessment 1, 3, 5 and 6. Either way is fine. There's no one that gets high marks, either is adequate. The quality measures is a really important part. To score in the high range, you need to be accurate in your identification of quality measures. So this is like what we were talking about for the outcome in class the other day. We were talking about what do you need to do, what decisions will you need to make during production to ensure that you get a high level of quality. So go back and think about those things that came under quality control. So you're thinking about making sure you're concentrating, making sure you're motivated, as well as making sure your equipment's all writing and working and set up properly, make sure you're keeping tidy space. So for example, with the woodwork example here, you would make sure you lined up the biscuit joiner carefully so that the cut is centered, so you've got quality in the process. Wipe off any excess PVA glue immediately, so you're not getting to the end and having dribbles of PVA glue all over your timber that have hardened and you're trying to get rid of. So little things like that. You could also say in here, ensure I have everything ready and organised before starting, because that will mean that you're not leaving it a join half done and trying to run off and get something else and it may, not line up properly. Same for here. Just a minute. Sorry, a little interruption there. So again, for textile students, things like matching the notches carefully when you're pinning will make sure that those pieces fit together properly, and so then you get a better shape, so therefore more better quality. Using a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance will ensure that your joints are all the correct size and your garment fits at the end. You can lay this out in the same categories of layout and cutting, embellishing, decorating, construction, finishing, or you can just do them in sequential order. I would suggest setting up your own table, or if you do use this table, please delete this information at the top. Don't leave this in here once you've finished. So have a go, send it through for a draft, get Mr. Mac or myself to check over your processes. It doesn't matter if these aren't all 100% accurate, it's just you planning and thinking about the logical sequencing so that when you go to make your product, you've got some idea of what's coming next. Any modifications to this get recorded in your production log and then discussed in your evaluation. Okay, enjoy.